dog rise and show. Well, the dog rise and show. Well, the dog rise and show. And I'm dog rice. I wonder if they can hold it all the way till I get to my seat. We're going to try that shit one day. Good morning, Dog Rice. How you doing? How you doing? Okay, good morning. It's 7:01. Friday, October 13th. Don't be scared, please. Do not imitate the ways of the heathen. Do you hear me? Negroes, good morning. It's Friday, end of the week. What's going on in the world? I don't know. I'm a kind of a dull news week, really, right? There's not much going on. Not much going on at all. Wait. I did hear something about 24 hours to get out of Gaza. I heard about a 300,000 man army. There's a lot of rumors going on. A lot of steps being taken. Isn't it something? A lot of earth being moved, a lot of rocks being shaken. Yeah, they're on the march. They are on the march. And you know what, folks? Prophetically, they are right in line. Prophetically, biblically, scripturally, they're on the mark. I mean that. They're parallel with prophecy. Isn't that something? And you know what's interesting, Negroes? They know it. This is the rub, as they call it. They know prophecy is unfolding in front of them. They know it. Now listen, this morning I got to look at a video. I'll try to share it later at some point. It discusses Gog and Magog coming together against Israel. Oh no, it's not a biblical program. It's not a biblical YouTube show. It's just it's looking at the growing relationship between Iran and Russia. And it examines that relationship and how it is growing against Israel and rapidly. And gives a very interesting historical perspective on the dynamics of the relationship between the two countries as it relates to Israel. Well, isn't that interesting? And all of these movements, all of these actions are predicated on one thing only. What we're looking at is predicated on the people fighting back. We'll say that, sure. And in this case, we'll talk about the Israelis. They're fighting back. The initial poking of the bear came from the Palestinians. That's fine. I take no sides. All are complicit in enslaving Negroes, so I don't take any sides. They're all acting crazy. Listen to me, both sides are acting out of their goddamned minds. They've been doing it for hundreds, if not thousands of years. I am not going to shed any tears. No. Also, let me say this, these Israelis. Now, listen, I do not agree with killing innocent people, women, children, raping, pillaging. All of that is of Neanderthal origin. Shall we? All of that has nothing to do with Negroes. We don't act like that. We don't mass murder. We don't genocide. We don't mass rape. We don't do that shit. So all that crap that's coming from over there has no sides for me. There is equally abhorrent in both directions simultaneously. But it's predicated on one thing, and that thing is that the Israelis are ancient Hebrews. Did you hear me? This all is based on one premise and one premise only, that the people that are fighting the Palestinians are in fact true Hebrews. And we got a problem. Now, let me tell you succinctly, let me tell you directly, let me tell you right now. We have a problem because if you're predicating 300,000 people going into Gaza, if you're predicating your presence in a place you do not originate from, if you're predicating your presence brought about by a 1948 Declaration of Balfour, all based on what you assert, in that you are ancient Hebrews. Well, let me reiterate, we got a problem. The problem is, well, the ancient Hebrews were black. Yeah, that's the problem. See that? Let me get it bigger there. The ancient Hebrews were black. So, what we're going to do today is we're going to examine this book, The Ancient Black Hebrews by Gert Muller, because so much is predicated, so many lives are being lost, so many families being destroyed, so much death and destruction, all based on this one ideation. And that idea is that the individuals that occupy Jerusalem, the government that makes up the state of Israel, these people are claiming to be ancient black Hebrews. So we're going to look, see. All right, thank you for tuning in. This is the Doug Rice Show. As you know, if you like the information, please be sure to support this effort. I will put down the links below. This book by Gert Muller is available on Amazon. And it shows here a relief of ancient Hebrews, and if I'm not mistaken, they're either being taken into captivity or something is being happening. But let's take a look at the hair right there. Let's take a look at the relief. And what do we see regarding the hair and the noses of these individuals? Let me tell you that it's not a long, stringy, pointing down to the earth type of blonde, leprous-like hair. No, you know what those are. Those are Negroes, and they're black. And as the Egyptian President Nasser said in 1950, whenever, 52, I believe, you left here black, you came back white, we will never accept you. That's what they said. And let me get back to this while I'm on it, because so much is being said about the innocents being taken, the lives of these Israelis that have made the determination to settle in a land that told them upon being settled that they would never have peace because they do not belong there. And it seems that everyone is focusing on the act, the barbaric act put upon them by the Palestinians, the abhorrent murders. I'm questioning the rapes and the beheadings and all of these things, but an uninitiated, just full-on scale, let's get to it. Today, I choose violence movement is uncalled for. I don't care your circumstances, you're damn right. Because if you were truly people of the Most High God, you wouldn't have to lift a fucking finger. The Creator would come to your rescue. Either side of you wouldn't have to barrage missiles at the other. You wouldn't have to have 300,000 men on the ground to accomplish your military ends. Both sides claim to be God-fearing, God-trusting, God-led creations. Beyond that, I see nothing more than vile aberrations of what they claim, but not what they truly believe. They all have flags. And I don't hear either side talking about the kingdom. I don't hear the Israelis talking about the kingdom of God soon approaching to envelop the earth and replace all other kingdoms. I don't hear the Israelis talk about that. And these are supposed to be the chosen of Almighty God. I don't hear them ushering in the kingdom. I hear them talking about their goddamned state. I don't hear the Palestinians talking about God Almighty arriving with the kingdom of heaven to bring about righteousness on the face of this planet. I don't hear Palestinians talking about that. I see them bombing folks, sending missiles, talking about their goddamned flag. I want it understood unequivocally and without doubt. I don't take a side in this melee, this expression of a human horror. I don't take a side. All of them are complicit in our demise, and all will be brought to correction in short order. All right, well, I had to open up with that. Ancient Black Hebrews, let's get back to that. All right. Gert Muller, pretty good writer, I got to admit. I don't know what this is. That's just, I don't know. Maybe that's some secret speak. I better pay attention to that. All right, folks. Follow along, the Ancient Black Hebrews, Gert Muller. And the Pomegranate Publishing in London. Oh, the highfalutenness of it all. I ain't doing the introductions no more. I don't think I'll do the introductions anymore. The introductions take a lot of time unless those aren't the introductions. Those might not have been the introductions. Oh, shoot. Yep. The original Hebrews. Well, those might not have been the introductions. We'll just go back. What do you think of that? So, again, boom, the introduction. This is Gert Muller, the Ancient Black Hebrews. She or he, I don't know which is which at this point. I don't know. Hopefully you can still hear me. A little warm in here. All right. All right. There are many attitudes towards the Bible, from utter reverence to complete disbelief and disdain. Some hold the Bible to be the word of God. Others merely a historical record of the Hebrews of ancient times, while others a work of fiction. For those who hold the first to be true, the accuracy of the divine revelation describing ancient Hebrews should not be in question. Do you understand that? This whole argument about who these people are should never be in question, because the Bible describes them and tells them their descendancy. We know who the Hebrews are. We know who everybody is. I mean, does that need to be misunderstood? It's only Negroes they didn't want to read. Isn't that odd? I need you to wrap your Negro mind around that fact. The only people on the planet that they did not want to read is Negroes. That's it. Oh, that and Islamic women. But that doesn't, I'm not talking, stop. For those who hold the second to be true, the accuracy of a Hebrew historical record and description describing the ancient Hebrews should not be in question, right? For those who hold the third to be true, the accuracy of an ancient work of fiction on the Hebrews and describing the ancient Hebrews has no obvious reason for doubt. The ancient author Heliodorus wrote an ancient work of fiction called Ethiopica, in which is Egyptian and Ethiopian characters whose physical descriptions are similar to those from factual works of the time. Even modern works of fiction, from Wuthering Heights to Harry Potter, would have characters of a physical appearance reflective of England at the time when the works were written. Branding the Bible a work of fiction is therefore not a get-out clause to the vexatious question of the physical appearance of the ancient Hebrews. Let's pause there because it's important. The physical appearance of the ancient Hebrews. The physical appearance of the ancient Hebrews. What an often overlooked topic, and they don't seem to want to approach why the Arabs don't want Israel in Palestine. They're not, it's all kind of danced around, the whole subject. Now it's just about wanting them out, and the Palestinians, the Israelis are about staying in, but nobody wants to hit the root cause of why this is happening. The physical appearance of Hebrews doesn't resemble what's in Israel today. The physical appearance of Hebrews described in the Bible, not only that, the genealogical, historical tracing that occurs in the Bible all the way back to Ham, Shem, and Japheth state unequivocally that the people that occupy Israel right now are from Japheth and not from Shem. They are not Shem. They are not Semitic. This is the root reason why so much is going on. Let's continue. Okay. The Garden of Eden in East Africa. According to the biblical book of Genesis, after the great flood, Noah's 3 sons fathered the present human race. And this story jives with civilizations everywhere. There are 70 different accounts of people going in a boat and saving themselves. All agree that that happened. Moving on. According to Science Meets the Bible, the Garden of Eden, discovered in East Africa by Gert Muller. Oh, hi there. The Garden of Eden was described in Genesis as having been near a 4-river system in the region of the lands of Cush, Havilah, and Ashur. The precise region would appear to have been near the borders of eastern Sudan, Ethiopia, and Eritrea. This was Eden, the garden of God, to the prophet Ezekiel, and approximates the land of Punt, God's land, to the ancient Egyptians. The 4 rivers are identified by Muller with specific rivers of the Nile watershed. This is a game changer when it comes to perceiving the physical appearance of the ancient Hebrews, because you automatically start off with an African humanity. Let's just avoid the insanity, okay? It is no longer African appearance that needs to be explained in the light of the white Adam and Eve that grace the illustrated Bibles. It is now European appearance that needs explaining in the light of an original African Adam and Eve. Do you understand? A bait and switch occurred in the land. Discovering the Garden of Eden in East Africa is also significant for another reason. This happens to be the reason where the oldest fully human remains on the planet have been found. It is the region where science meets the Bible. It raises the intriguing question of whether the Genesis authors had access to more information than we presently imagine. All the people of the early chapters of Genesis from Adam to Noah were intended to be from this region, and therefore Africans. Noah and his 3 sons were imagined to be Africans. Now, let me just pause there. We don't know for certain. Nobody can tell for certain, but it would only stand to reason. If you go back far enough, everything is black in color. Every living being, human being, descendant, as you go back and further, they stopped digging. They stopped digging because the deeper they dug, the blacker humans, people got. And the more disassociative their presence was with those they discovered. You know, when you discover that you're different, when you discover that you don't have an association with the earth that you were conceived upon, you know, that might have a jarring effect on your mentality. It may cause you to do all kinds of deceitful things. You just never know. Okay, let's get back to it. Sons of Noah. Underneath the story of people in early Genesis, these sons of Noah represent primary geographical territories of Okumenia, or known ancient world. Ham, whose name in Hebrew means hot, represents known Africa, subdivided into the sons of Ham, or the divisions of Sudan/Ethiopia, Cush, Egypt, Mizraim, Libya, Put, and Syro-Palestine, Canaan. The last was considered a subdivision of Africa and is the only part of Western Asia that adjoins Africa. It therefore makes sense to conclude Canaan, or Syro-Palestine, was seen as an extension of modern-day Africa, represented by the other 3 older sons. Some of the grandsons of Ham, however, leave the primary subdivision of Africa and migrate to Mesopotamia and Crete. These include Nimrod, the son of Cush, who founded Sumer and Akkad. It also included Calcium, son of Mizraim, who fathered the Philistines, and Caphtorim, son of Mizraim, who is the eponymous ancestor of the Cretans. Crete is Europe's first civilization, and Mesopotamia is Asia's first civilization. According to Genesis, the grandsons of Africa founded the first civilizations of Asia and Europe. Now listen carefully. The sons of Japheth, meaning enlarged, represent the geographical subdivision of Europe. Now listen. In Genesis, we are told the sons of Japheth, Gomer and Magog and Madai and Javan and Tubal and Meshesh and Tiraz. And the sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz and Rephath and Togarmah. And the sons of Javan, Elisha and Tarshish, Kittim and Dodanim. But these were the isles of the Gentiles divided in their lands, every one after his tongue, after their families, in their nation. And when they talk about isles, they're talking about Europe. They're talking about up there. They're talking about in that lighter area. They're talking about Japheth was the progenitor of lighter-skinned individuals. I mean, that's just a fact. And the people who claim to be Jews in Israel descend from Japheth. That's a fact. They don't descend from Shem. And they call themselves Semites. They are not. Let's continue. The Bible scholar Rudolf R. Renzer, a pioneer amongst exposing Black origins of the Hebrews, explains which nations descend from Japheth. Gomer was the ancestor of the first Cimmerians and of the late Cimbri, including other offshoots of the Celtic family. The second son of Japheth was Magog, the father of Magogites. Flavius Josephus said that the Greeks called these people Scythians. The third son of Japheth was Madai, the father of the Medes. They were located at the southern part of the Caspian Sea. From Javan, the fourth son of Japheth, came the Ionians and all of the Greeks. The last son, are you listening, Negroes? The last son, Tiras, the father or ancestor of the Thracians, Japheth's grandson Ashkenaz, formed the Germanic race. In the Hebrew language, the word means German, and that comes from Babylon to Timbuktu. We've recovered that book. The nations and peoples identified as descending from Japheth are all European or white-skinned people. I'll read that again. The nations and peoples identified as descending from Japheth are all European or white-skinned people. Some descendants of Japheth moved to Asia, like the Medes, who entered Iran in the late 2nd millennium BC, and the Cimmerians, who came from north of the Caucasus Mountains to Anatolia, modern Turkey, in the 8th century BC. These people originated in more northern, colder climes. So now, without a doubt, and beyond reason and beyond any measure, it can be traced back to the sons of Noah, the individuals claiming to be Jews in Jerusalem do not descend from Shem. They descend from Japheth. Japheth's progeny were all white people. And so we're going to now look at who descended from Shem. The sons of Shem. Shem represents the geographical territory of Western Asia, and his sons are all peoples or ethnic groups in that region. In chapter 10 of Genesis, we are told of the sons of Shem. Let's read about them. Let's read about them. Children of Shem, Elam and Ashur, and Arphaxad, and Lud, and Aram. And the children of Aram, Uz, and Hul, and Gether, and Mash. And Arphaxad beget Salah, and Salah beget Ebner, and unto Ebner were born 2 sons. The name of one was Peleg, for in his days was the earth divided, and his brother's name was Joktan. And Joktan begat Almadad, and Shelef, and Hazar Maveth, and Jerah, and Hidoram, and Uzal, and Diklah, and Obal, and Abimiel, and Sheba, and Ophir, and Havilah, and Jobal. All these were the sons of Joktan. Now, follow it. Let us see which nations were represented by these sons of Shem. The eldest is Elam, the eldest. And he is the eponymous ancestor of the Elamites, or ancient southwest Iran. Are you feeling it? Listen to me. How quickly can it be understood that all the folks regarding Shem are related? And how long can they keep the secret that Negroes are true Hebrews forever abated? I don't know. Somebody gonna look in the Bible and it's gonna say so. I'm just telling you, this is really interesting. The capital city of Elam was Susa. Sometimes Elam is called Susiana. In Genesis 14:15, an Elamite king is identified as Shedor Laomor. Many Elamite kings in Susian inscriptions had Kedor at the beginning of their names. This makes it clear that the Elamites of history were intended by the author of Genesis to be descended from Elam, son of Shem. The Elamites spoke a language with no known genetic relations. When Elam was conquered by the Indo-European speaking Persians, they became the black section of Persian society. The black arches and the glazed brick reliefs of the palace of Darius are thought to be descended from the Elamites. Elam was the ancestor of a black nation. So there we go. There's Shem's kid there. The next son is Ashur and represents the aboriginal people of the northern Mesopotamia, just as the Elamites represent the aboriginal southwest Iranians. They spoke a northwest dialect of Akkadian called Assyrian. It is a Semitic language. The area was heavily settled by Sabartians and Hurrians in the 3rd millennium BC. The Assyrians of the 1st millennia BC are the nearest white descendants of the Ashurites, who were much mixed with northerners. Very interesting. And here they come, right? No. Arphaxad is not the eponymous ancestor of any known nation, but his grandson is Eber, the eponymous ancestor of the Hebrews. Of Eber's 2 sons, the Israelites are descendants of Peleg through Abraham. Much is known of the descendants of Joktan because they settled in Arabia. Today, the Arabians, who are said to be descendants from Joktan and the Arabian genealogies, are the aboriginal people of southern and central Arabia. They speak non-Arabic South Semitic languages like the Mahri. They have wavy hair, varying facial features, and African complexions. The names of some of the descendants of Joktan, like Sheba and Havilah, also occurred across the Red Sea in East Africa, descended from Cush. There's nothing known about the descendants of Joktan, Eber or Axarphad, to suggest that these ancestors would have been anything other than black. The 4th son, Lud, is given no descendants in Genesis. We note, however, the name Lud also appears as a name for one of the sons of Mizraim. Aram, the youngest son, was the eponymous ancestor of the Armenians, or Arameans of Syria. They spoke a Semitic language of the same name. There are paintings of black Syrian kings, priests, and dignitaries in Anu Mbantu's Unmistakably Black. This strongly suggests that the original Arameans were black. They appear to have originated in the Jebel Bishri region of Syria, which appears to lie outside the African fault line. All areas of Syro-Palestine within the African fault line were seen as part of Ham, or Africa. There is also the testimony of the 9th century Jewish commentary, Pike. He said, Noah especially blessed Shem and his son, making them dark but comely. And he gave them the habitable earth. He blessed Ham and his sons, making them dark like a raven. And he gave them as an inheritance the coast of the sea. He blessed Japheth and his sons, making them entirely white. Somebody got a problem? Then leave, say good night. Isn't that something? So what are we looking at here? Is this hidden history? Is this not a fact? Am I just moving, air from one place to the other and that's that? No. This is the key and principal point of why there's so much discord in the joint. Now, let's talk about the sons of Ham and Shem. The sons of Ham and Shem are both dark. The term itself can be interpreted many ways, but the qualifications here are instructive. Ham is dark like a raven, which is the darkest possible complexion. You ever seen an African? Of course you have. In the case of Shem, dark but comely, is a phrase clearly recalling Song of Solomon 1:5, where the word is used shakor, or shiny black. It is used to describe horses elsewhere in the Bible. We can therefore be sure that Ham and Shem were imagined to be the same color, the Midianites. Shem's most famous descendant was his great-great-great-grandson, Abraham. We are told in the Bible that Abraham had children with 3 women, Hagar the Egyptian, Sarah, and Keturah. We are told of his children with the last woman. Then again, after Sarah's death, Abraham took a wife, and her name was Keturah. And she bare him Zimran, and Jokshan, and Medan, and Midian, and Ishbak, and Shua. Abraham was a little bit busy. And Jokshan begat Sheba and Dedan. The sons of Dedan were Ashuriam, and Letushim, and Leman. I'm trying. And the sons of Midian, Ephah, and Epher, and Hanok, and Abida, and Eldaah. All these were the children of Keturah. Keturah was a busy, busy woman. Midian here is the son of Abraham. He is the eponymous ancestor of a little-known people of the earlier parts of the Bible called Midianites. They were descendants of Shem. In Habakkuk, when the prophet said, I saw the tents of Cushan in affliction, and the curtains of the land of Midian did tremble. Easton's Bible Dictionary refers to Cushan as probably a poetic or prolonged name of the land of Cush, the Arabian Cush. So Midian and Cushan are clearly the same place from the parallel context of the passage, and the Midianite wife of Moses is also referred to as Cushite. Why would Midian, a nation whose name was known to the Hebrews, be referred to as Cushan, and its people Cushites? The Cushites had 2 characteristics that served to distinguish them from other African and Western Asiatic nations. They were tall and had unchanging complexions. The use of the name Cushite to refer to them strongly suggests the Midianites also had these characteristics. There is some evidence that these Egyptians also referred to these same Arabians as Cush. Since the Midianites were descended from Shem through Abraham, we can only conclude that Abraham and Shem have been imagined to be African in appearance. All right, so what do we know? We know and establish that the folks that call themselves descendants of Abraham have absolutely no association skin tone wise or genealogically with ancient Hebrews. We know beyond doubt and for a fact that the original Hebrews descended from Jacob, and if that's the case, that means you're talking about a dark complexioned individual. But Again, it's paramount that we look into this because they're not going to stop the war. There and it seems though the facts are right in front of them, they absolutely choose to ignore them. But let's delve a little deeper in this, find out what we find out. Let's see. The original Hebrews. Now wait, that's who these people claim to be. The original Hebrews. They claim to be descendants of Jacob. Now, Jacob, the Hebrews, the descendants of Abraham, are one branch of the continuing story after the great flood. No change of color is ever mentioned in Genesis for any of Noah's descendants. Did you hear that? Since they started with an African appearance, we can only assume that this continued. Verses describing events in Genesis support this. The headrests of sub-Saharan Africa, Melanesia, and ancient Egypt are identical in design and hardness. It has always been thought strange by European scholars that a pillow should be made of wood. The traveler and researcher Dr. F.D.P. Wicker observed, the Egyptians had headrests, which are uncomfortable for people with straight hair. This would explain why the headrests only occur in cultures with afro hair like the Egyptians. In this connection, we read with much interest, and Jacob went out from Beersheba and went to Haran, and he lighted up upon a certain place and tarried there all night because the sun was set. And he took stones of that place, and put them for his pillow and lay down in that place to sleep. Well, I wonder what happens if you bring this particular story up, located in Genesis 28:11, to the average Jewish convert in Israel. And what if you ask them, Jacob used a stone for a headrest. Can you do that? Okay, we'll stop. This suggests that Jacob's hair was similar to that of sub-Saharan Africans, ancient Egyptians, and Melanesians. Given that Jacob was the grandson of Abraham, this is hardly surprising. Joseph, at the age of 17, was sold by his brothers to Midianite traders who sold him on to the Egyptians. In that land, he rose to become prime minister. Decades later, a famine arose in the land of Canaan, which forced his brothers to come to Egypt to buy grain. Joseph's brothers failed to recognize him because of his relative youth when they last saw each other. His brothers, however, had been adults when they sold him, so it was easier for him to recognize them. Joseph was also seeing them dressed in their cultural context, but his brothers were seeing him dressed as an Egyptian. Joseph, understandably, spoke to them rudely. When they returned to Canaan, they said to their father, "The man who is lord over the land spoke roughly to us and took us for spies of the country." Chapter 42 strongly suggests that there was nothing in the appearance of Joseph that distinguished him from the Egyptians. This would include his dress and his physical characteristics. Are we keeping up, folks? Are we understanding the ancient Black Hebrews? Let's see if we continue. Moses, it is this same lack of distinguishing physical characteristics between Hebrews and Egyptians that allowed Moses to survive Pharaoh's death edict. A royal princess adopted him as her son to save him. A color difference between Hebrews and Egyptians would have made this deception difficult. Most theories attempting to identify the Egyptian princess place her in the 18th and 19th dynasty, usually from the family of Ramses II. Historical researcher David Roll places her in the 13th dynasty. All these dynasties are known to have been native Egyptian. Roll shows evidence that the 13th dynasty were Egyptian nationalists against Asiatic incursion. It is generally known that the 18th dynasty was founded by Egyptian nationalists who liberated the country from Hyksos, the rule. The African-American historian Runoko Rashidi gives a breakdown of Egyptian dynasties and includes the 13th, 18th, and 19th as southern dynasties from Thebes. This is an important point because not all Egyptians in the north were native Africans. Many were of West Asiatic descent, and some West Asians in the 2nd millennium BC were white. Listen to that. This story makes it unlikely that Moses belonged to this group because the princess pretending to be his mother was a southerner. Let's clear it all up. Later, in Moses' murders, an Egyptian overseer who he saw abusing a Hebrew slave, he flees Egypt to avoid the consequences of the 6th commandment. He arrives in Midian and helps the daughters of the Midianite priest who are being prevented by shepherds from accessing a well. The daughters report back to their father and say, "An Egyptian delivered us out of the hands of the shepherds and also drew water enough for us and watered the flock." This again shows that a Hebrew in Egyptian clothes was simply taken for an Egyptian. And let's pause for the cause. Listen, there's some brouhaha involving Kevin Hart talking about Egyptians were black. And I think they cut this brother off just like that, right? Told him don't even come to Egypt, some other night. I mean, what is it? The slow mental melding of individuals thinking lightness and whiteness are associated with betterment. That's this diseased, I would say, ill-equipped mindset that people walk around with these days. And this is the reason it's important that we look into this carefully. Because clearly Moses was black, clearly Jacob was black, clearly all of Joseph was black, the Egyptians were black, and everybody is somehow concerned about a bunch of Europeans who say they are Hebrews, who are not black. You would think that this would be easily established and the matter's resolved. But let's see how much longer perhaps it'll get solved. This again shows the Jesus. Yep, we did that. There's a famous episode in Exodus when God speaks to Moses through a burning bush. This is the first encounter between God and Moses. It is not as well known as that Moses asked for divine proof to show the elders of Israelites that he really had been sent by God. What is not well known. He is given the ability to perform 2 miracles. The first was turning a rod into a snake. The second was turning his hand white. God then gives a commentary on the miracles. "And it shall come to pass, if they will not believe thee, neither hearken to the voice of the first sign, they will believe the voice of the latter sign." What? The object of having 2 miracles was obviously to convince everyone. It is evident from the story that the purpose of the second miracle was to convince those who had not been impressed by the first one. This strongly suggests that the second miracle was seen as more impressive. The divine commentary above turned out to be as good as hindsight because Pharaoh was not impressed by turning rods into snakes. Moses performed the second miracle in front of the Israelite elders. We are told in the Torah that there were 600,000 men among the Israelites. Assuming a very conservative estimate of 1 elder for every 1,000 men would give Moses an audience of at least 600 elders. The change of hand color to white would have to be visible from a distance, given a minimum crowd of 600. A change of color from tan to white would not be visible from the back of the crowd and would not be seen as more impressive than turning a rod into a snake. The only change of color that could be seen by everyone in the crowd and would have been more impressive than the first is to change from a black complexion to a white one. Well, let me tell you. Is that what them Israelis have done? Have they performed a miracle? Have they changed their complexion from black to white? Are we also going to simply ignore the fact that white skin is associated with disease? Are we going to ignore the fact that white skin is known as a form of leprosy? Nobody wants to talk about that. Now I'm getting insensitive, right? No, I'm not. The truth isn't sensitive or insensitive. It's just there. The changing of skin color is mentioned again in a little-known episode from the book of Numbers. It occurs as a punishment. It occurs as a punishment. And Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses because of the Ethiopian Cushite woman. And he had married. For he had married an Ethiopian woman. And they said, hath the Lord indeed spoken only to Moses? Have he not spoken also by us? And the Lord heard it. The Lord came down in a pillar of the cloud and stood in the door of the tabernacle and called Aaron and Miriam, and they both came forth. And he said, hear now my words, if there be a prophet among you. I, the Lord, will make myself known to him in a vision, and will speak to him in a dream. My servant Moses is not so, who is faithful in all mine house. With him I will speak mouth to mouth, even apparently, and not in dark speeches. And the similitude of the Lord shall he behold. Wherefore then were ye not afraid to speak against my servant Moses? And the anger of the Lord was kindled against them. Not good. And he departed from off the tabernacle, and behold, Miriam became what? Leprous, white as snow. And Aaron looked upon her, and behold, she was leprous. And Aaron said unto Moses, alas, my Lord, beseech thee, lay not this sin upon us wherein we have done foolishly and wherein we have sinned. You want to talk about who's in Israel? You want to talk about who's in Israel? You really want to talk about why these beings are amassing 300,000 soldiers to clear the road of dark-skinned people? Do you want to know why they don't want this kind of information circulated amongst Negroes? Do you need the reason they did not want Negroes to read? Well, we have it in front of us. Biblical writers of European ancestry have historically viewed this passage as Miriam expressing disapproval of her intermarriage between Hebrews and Ethiopians based on skin color. Yeah, everybody got to be like them, huh? Anyone who accepts this interpretation, however, also has to accept that to speak against an Ethiopian's color is to sin and have done foolishly. The punishment in this light would indeed be ironic. Black Bible writers, on the other hand, have stressed the cultural differences between Hebrews and Ethiopians, Midianites, as having been the reason, and have denied color being the issue, or could have been, maybe she was a little bit younger, who knows? Come on now, we know. I don't think skin color had anything to do with it at that point. What? And the cultural differences may have had a problem, but let's continue. Some interesting facts emerge from this passage. Even though the origins of the problem appear to be with speaking against the Ethiopian wife, God does not mention the wife at all in his rebuke. His concern is with the critique of the uniqueness of the relationship between God and Moses. A critique he corrects. God then becomes angry and specifically punishes Miriam. A reconstructed picture emerges if we include facts known about these individuals from elsewhere in the Bible and combine them with common sense about human nature. The first expression of dissatisfaction is in verse 1, where Miriam, Moses' older sister, criticizes his wife. The wife is referred to as the Ethiopian, simply to identify her in what was very likely a polygamous household. This Ethiopian woman was the daughter of the priest of Midian. She is elsewhere named as Zipporah. She was clearly outspoken, she had a mouth, and would not hesitate to chastise Moses when he neglected his duties. Well, you know, some women are just like that, dog. Miriam's friction with Zipporah can be seen as a battle for influence over the prophet between his older sister and his outspoken wife. Miriam instigated this, but could not motivate Aaron to side with her on this basis alone. Hence, the inclusion of "hath the Lord only spoken by Moses." This would have been easy to exploit because Moses was slow of speech and of tongue, while Aaron could speak well. Yet it was the Moses who is chosen as the prophet. In the story, God was evidently happy to leave human affairs to humans until the dispute involved him. When God steps in, the real investigator of the problem is punished, and Aaron gets off with a warning. The Ethiopian wife is clearly not the real issue, whether because of color or culture. In any case, Aaron and Miriam are family with Moses in the story. Since it took a miracle for two of them to turn white as snow, in contrast to their natural complexion, we can be sure none of the family were white. Not being white is not the same, however, as being black. So we shall see whether the precise complexion can be narrowed down. All right, folks, so where are we at? What are we talking about? We're talking about the complexion of the true Israelites. We're talking about black Hebrews. And we're contrasting that, pardon the pun, to the individuals who are now at war with the world at this point, the Islamic world, those same individuals who were culpable in the transatlantic slave trade. Nobody gets off. And now, I don't understand. Why can't the point be made the reason they don't want you where you are is because you are not the people you say you are? Why can't that point be made? If they just said, look, we converted to Judaism and we just feel we belong here and we just gonna stay here, I'd respect that more. I really would. I would respect it more if the Ashkenazi European convert whose King Bulan converted the Khazarians to Judaism and then the Prince of Ukraine conquered Khazaria, and the Jews spread throughout Europe, and they didn't have their own country. The newly converted Jews who practice the religion of Negroes, who sold Negroes into slavery, with no place to go, start 2 world wars to accomplish the theft of property and position not rightfully theirs. And that's the truth. And people don't want to get into the details of why hell is breaking loose. Don't you find it odd that the world seemed to have come apart shortly after the movement of Negroes from their homeland? They began to fight over the resources of that continent. Our resources, not theirs. And back and forth and forth and back, these Gentile heathen clowns, having moved us away from our property, deceive one another, back and forth, laying siege to the land of milk and honey, and all because they wanted to sell Negro. Well, how's that working out for you? Our 400-year punishment is done, and we will be restored, and you will go back to where you come from. I drift. I had to go there. Occasionally, I got to go there. I'm sorry. The Levitical laws. Moses received the Levitical laws regarding cleanliness while in the wilderness with the Israelites. These laws tell a similar story about the general complexion of the ancient Hebrews, and it ain't white. They're not blonde-haired, blue-eyed demons, a synagogue of Satan. That's not what they are. We are introduced to the concept of biblical leprosy. When a man shall have in the skin of his flesh arising a scab, a bright spot, and it be in the skin of his flesh like the plague of leprosy, then he shall be brought unto Aaron the priest, and unto one of his sons, the priests. Folks, it ain't rocket science what we're looking at. Perhaps if you told these Jews directly to their face what you represent is what offends us. Arising is clearly any swelling above skin level and a bright spot in any area lighter than the rest of the skin. We are then told in verses 4, 39, and 28 that if the bright spot be white in the skin of his flesh and in the sight, be not deeper than the skin, and the hair thereof be not turned white, then the priest shall shut up him that hath the plague 7 days. And behold, if the bright spots in the skin of their flesh be darkish white, it is a freckled spot that groweth in the skin, he's clean. And if the bright spots stay in his place and spread not in the skin, but somewhat dark, it's rising all the burn, the priest shall pronounce him clean. That's just a mole. The complexions, white, dark white, and somewhat dark, are contrasted with the Hebrew complexion because they are bright in relation. Don't lose me. We are thus told that the Hebrews were neither white nor dark white nor somewhat dark. We're done. One could reasonably say that they were not Nordic, not Mediterranean, nor of a tawny complexion. And let me just say this, let me get this out the way. Let me get this out the way for brother T. I mean, not boxwood either. We weren't the color of goddamn boxwood. What the hell? Y'all trying to make shit up now. This certainly narrows down the complexion possibility. In regards to hair in Leviticus, we read, hair, here we go, folks, here we go. If a man or a woman have a plague upon the head or the beard, then the priest shall see the plague, and behold, if it be in sight deeper than the skin, and there be in it yellow thin hair, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. They don't want you to read this. They don't want, because you're looking at them sideways. We look at all of them with a side eye. That seems a bit conveniently odd. It is a dry skull, even a leprosy upon the head or beard. And if the priest look on the plague of the skull, and behold, it is not in sight deeper than the skin, and that there is no black hair in it, then the priest shall shut him up that hath the plague 7 days. It is clear from the above that yellow, thin hair in this context was considered unclean, while black hair was the general hair color of the Hebrews. So who are these people? Who are these people in Israel? Who are these people amassing a 300,000 man army? Who are these people that just decided to settle into this area in 1948? Who the fuck are these people? Because they're not Hebrews. They're something else. In conjunction with the complexion implied by the leprosy laws, this strongly suggests people of African appearance. This is what they don't want you to read. This is what they don't want you to put together, and this is the topic they won't talk about. Let's get them in a room. I'll control the narrative. We'll talk about it. We'll get it out. And y'all tell the truth. The Fitzpatrick skin tone chart explains the inverse relationship between the susceptibility of skin to solar damage on the one hand and trauma UV-induced pigmentation on the other. Its development started in 1972 with the research of Dr. Thomas Fitzpatrick of Harvard Medical School. The more susceptible one is to solar damage of the skin, then the less susceptible they are to trauma-induced or UV-induced pigmentation increase. Below, column 1, the Fitzpatrick skin types from the website of the New Zealand Dermatological Society Incorporated. Oh my goodness. Oh goodness. Okay, column 2 are given of famous people who fit each skin type from the official blog of Skin Care. I'm not looking into all of that, but here it is. So here we go. Pale white, Kate Blanchett, pale as snow. Jennifer Aniston is white, kind of fair. Sandra Bullock's a dark white. Okay, we get there. Eva Menendez is somewhat white. Okay, I get it. And Beyonce is brown. Yep. And Naomi Campbell is dark brown. Okay, we all got that. Good. This strongly suggests that the complexion range amongst the ancient Hebrews was from Beyonce to Naomi Campbell. This is an agreement with Moses and Joseph being mistaken for Egyptians, Moses' hand turning white as an impressive miracle, and his sister being punished by a complexion so at odds with her general appearance. Okay, King Solomon. The Hebrews also make an issue of black hair in the Song of Solomon, where the king is being described by his Shulamite queen. My beloved is white and ruddy, the chiefest 10,000. His head is as most fine gold. His locks are bushy and black as a raven. My lover is radiant and ruddy, outstanding 10,000. His head pure as gold, his hair wavy and black as raven. These are the different biblical interpretations. The alternate translation of the adjective of the locks of hair is bushy and wavy, gives the impression of thick hair with an inclination to curl. Clark's commentary has crisped and curled. When we research further, we discover that the Hebrew used here is talim, meaning branches of a palm tree, which is also used in the translations of Wycliffe and Douay-Rheims. This gives the distinct impression of the hair having a stiff quality. In the New American Standard, it becomes cluster of dates, giving the impression of a very short dreadlocks. This expression is interpreted in most other translations as bushy, wavy, etc. The quality of hair suggested by the original uninterpreted expression is clearly afro, and yet Young's literal translation has flowing. It illustrates how everywhere in the Bible where a description of a person is given, we must take the translation against the original Hebrew. Why? Because they attempt to change the likeness of God's children to themselves. This should cause us to question the white and ruddy part of the verse. The New Living Translation has, in place of white and ruddy, dark and dazzling. It should come as little surprise that the original Hebrew word Adam, red, related to Adama, earth, so presumably red like earth, was not a reference to pinkish color. It would be more accurate to say reddish brown. This does not support white and ruddy, but supports dark. This interpretation is supported by the word Adama in Akkadian, meaning dark, and Udama in Arabic, meaning brown like the soil or very dark, in reference to complexion. The word, which has been translated white in the King James Version and as radiant in the New International Version and dazzling in the NLV, is the Hebrew sa, pronounced tza. It occurs 4 times in the Bible and is translated twice as dazzling, once as scorching, making the former the primary interpretation. The translation of white does not occur anywhere else in the Bible and seems to be opportunistic. We therefore conclude that the more accurate translation is dark and dazzling, which goes well with locks that are clusters of dates and black. Solomon is also described by his queen in Solomon 5:15 as his countenance is as Lebanon, excellent as the cedars. Lebanon was and still is a white-topped mountain, but since Solomon was clearly black-haired, this interpretation would make no sense. Lebanon cedars were, and to a degree still are, synonymous. Lebanon and cedars. We are told of cedar, repeatedly mentioned by the sacred writers, the wood of it is solid, beautiful, inclining to a brown color, and possessing a strong aromatic smell. We notice that inclining to a brown color is in an agreement with dark and dazzling, and the reddish brown color implied by the term Adam. It is also in agreement with the same complexion given to his father David, also variously given as ruddy and dark. We can also see that the Lebanese cedar reference is not just to complexion, but also to possessing a strong aromatic smell, a theme which occurs in verse 13 of the chapter. The same reddish brown is alluded to in Lamentations 4, despite appearances to the contrary, as we shall soon see. So, what are we talking about? We're establishing the color of Hebrews. We're establishing the biblical history of the descriptions of Hebrews and related peoples. We're establishing the miracles that the Creator used in establishing His authority, from turning dark skin to white skin. He did this twice. He did it as a punishment. He did it as a way. Why aren't they discussing their white skin? Why aren't the Israelis explaining their white skin? Are they cursed? Is it leprosy? How did you go from dark skin, that skin being used as an example by God Almighty to offset contrast and make a point, and suddenly the Creator determined He didn't need that dark skin on you as you beset yourself back into a region where dark skin is probably a good damned idea? We also won't talk about that Israel has the highest skin cancer rates. These are supposed to be God's chosen people. The ancient black Hebrews. That's who we are. And that's who they're not. Verse 14, however, it is said of Solomon, his belly is as bright ivory overlaid with sapphires. Some might be tempted to take this as a reference to white color, but the earlier part of the same verse compares his hands to gold rings set with beryl. The first part of verse 15 compares his legs to pillars of marble set upon sockets of fine gold. Every part of Solomon's body is being compared to something precious, with no consistent color analogy. The ivory reference thus cannot be taken literally. It thus brings us to Lamentations 4, 7 through 8. Her Nazarites were purer than snow. They were whiter than milk. They were more ruddy in body than rubies. Their polish was of sapphire. Their visage is blacker than coal. They are not known in the streets. Their skin cleaveth to their bones. It is withered. It has become like a stick. The question naturally arises, which color were the Israelites? Snow white or coal black? Clearly, they could not have been both. The terms snow and milk are in reference to behavioral, non-physical qualities. We know this because purer is far more likely to describe a behavioral quality than one of complexion. We also know this because when ruddy is used, it is followed by the indicator in body to show that a physical quality is being introduced. This means what came before was not in reference to the body, knowing that the term ruddy is from the Hebrew Adam, red like earth, makes the second verse easier to understand. Rubies can be reddish brown. People of reddish brown complexion will experience a skin darkening response to trauma, certain illnesses, and starvation. This dark color can be poetically compared to coal black. The medical term for this darkening is called hyperpigmentation and is a skin sign of starvation. Remember, when we starve, when people starve, they get black. Okay. Hyperpigmentation tends to be more acute in people with Fitzpatrick skin type 5 and 6. Now, with the benefit of this knowledge, we can see the majority context, like Lamentation 5's above, in which skin is described as black in the Bible, is that of famine and disease. My bowels boiled and rested not. The days of affliction prevented me. My skin is black upon me. My bones are burned with heat. In a population where the general complexion range is from Beyonce to Naomi Campbell, we would expect starvation-induced hyperpigmentation to result in complexions that appear coal black. The Shulamite queen, in verse 5 of chapter 1, one of Solomon's queen, identified only by the title Shulamite, declares, I am black and comely, O ye daughters of Jerusalem, as the tents of Kedar, as the curtains of Solomon. Look not upon me, because I am black, because the sun hath looked upon me. My mother's children were angry with me. They made me the keeper of the vineyards. but mine own I have not kept. Many a black and white scholar have seen this as an apology for blackness and a plea for acceptance, but there is a problem. If she were apologizing for an unattractive feature, it is unlikely that she would have applied poetical repetition as the tents of Kedar, black, as the curtains of Solomon, black. She would have emphasized her beauty only and not the color. This should cause us to look more carefully at the translation. The King James Version juxtaposes beauty with black, as explained in the African Heritage Bible footnotes. The King James Version, among other, reflects an adversative, but comely, despite the fact that the original Greek text uses the standard conjunction and. The original Hebrew from which the Greek translators interpreted and simply had the word black, followed by the word beautiful. The way it is written in Hebrew reminds us of the Arabic expression, black is beautiful. The Shulamite queen says, look not upon me because I am black. The only reason why you would ask people to look beyond a physical feature is because it is either very attractive or very not. In this respect, we discover, it appears both from sacred and profane writers that black was a color held in great estimation among the ancients. It was, in their opinion, emblematical of the inscrutable nature of divinity, which was probably the reason that many of their idols were painted of this color. In Homer, black eyes are celebrated as distinguishing lineament in female loveliness. Well now, so there is a war against black. There's a war against black, and white is leading the way. And this war against these associative colors is still going on today. So we now have a better understanding of who black Hebrews are, who they were. I don't know if I can go any further in this book. It probably goes on for a while. It does. And so I'm going to stop here, folks. Listen, this is about who people claim to be and the acceptance of those people. And right now, as we speak, in Israel, this long-term, historically brutal and vile war is all predicated on individuals who claim to be black Hebrews but are not. That's all I got, folks. I'm going to end it there. I got a lot of stuff I got to do. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I appreciate you. I got to go. Hey, you have a damn good weekend. This is the Doug Rice Show. Bye-bye. Wait! Darn it! Ended wrong. Listen, folks. It's the weekend, okay? Yeah, they got some little, they talk about a jihad going global. Just stay Negro. Don't pay attention to that. If they jihad, you look at them and just tell them, hey, we just passing through. We're not with these people. And they know who you are anyway. On site, don't even sweat it. Nobody's coming to the hood. No jihad in the hood. I guarantee that. Y'all all good. But as long as you have to be out there in public places, get that goddamned grin off your faces. Have a good day.